Well, welcome. We're so glad you're with us on a rainy April night. We were a little concerned that, wet leaves are like ice, and so we thought it might eradicate our numbers for attendance, but we're glad that you're here. Our speaker tonight is a good friend, and in the summer of 1985, I met Bob in the basement of somebody's house, which sounds nefarious. I promise it's not. But, I was thinking last week, I was giving a little bit of my life story to some high school kids that I work with, and they were asking me about my high school experience. And I was thinking about meeting Bob on a rainy Wednesday night. I remember it vividly. I was 15 years old. And you ever have those relationships? I'm sure you all do. If your life has any sort of hindsight to it where you see important events happen, that night ended up being one of the most important nights of my life. Because if you look at the most important relationships in your life, it looks a lot like a family tree. And you can trace those significant relationships, you can trace them moving forward like I can, and I can see the night that I met Bob led to all of the most significant relationships in my life, including my lovely bride here, Kim Kane. I met everyone that was important to my story as a result of that rainy Wednesday night. I hope that some of you might be able to tell that story as a result of this rainy Tuesday night. But our hopes are high. In addition to being a terrific author, you're going to get to hear a little bit about Bob's seminal work, Vision for Your Life. In addition to that, Bob is an executive coach where he leads leaders, which is, if you're a leader, you know how difficult you are to lead. It's a very, imagine the job where you're like, you need to tell the people who like telling other people what to do, you have to tell them what to do. It's a challenging job, and it's what leads me to the third area of Bob's expertise. He loves wine. And some of you have enjoyed his palate tonight. Bob runs a wine club that's out of Bordeaux, France, and the wines that we're drinking tonight were his selection. So if you don't care for them, which I don't know how that could happen, he would be the guy to talk to. But really, most importantly, Bob is one of the most spectacular leaders I've ever had the privilege to watch and to be around. He has the instincts, just natural-born instincts, like a guy who can hit a curveball that's going 85 miles an hour. Bob knows leadership. He just does. And he's a terrific communicator. So please, join me in welcoming Bob Perkins.
This is Ronnie. Can you hear me in the back? Yes. I'm reminded that introductions are like perfume. They are to be smelled, not swallowed, but thank you nonetheless. I did meet Matt when he was 15, and he was about this high as a freshman in high school, and he walked into to that basement and to that Young Life Club, and it has been a great ride and great to be friends for such a long time, and I appreciate you very much. Matt's right about a couple of things, one of which is that well, he didn't really say this, but what he meant was, I'm a terrible employee. I don't play with others well. I've been watching, and I don't recommend, I've been watching The Tudors, which is like 10 years old, but I'm finally getting around to watching it. And I realized that Henry VIII killed not only wives, he killed all his executive coaches. It's not a good omen. I'm watching this and thinking, another executive coach gets beheaded. I got to choose another line of work. But it is that I was with this organization for 22 years, and about year 13, they came to me and they said, you don't really fit. And I said, I know that. And so. The worst day, best day of my life. The movie City Slickers, they're riding the horses. And he says to him, what's the worst day of your life? He says, the day my father walked out. What's the best day of your life? Same day. Worst day of my life? Day they came to me and said, you need to leave. Best day of my life? Same day. Because it was the day that I had to really figure out, at 40 years old, with a family and a mortgage, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I got a job as a regional director for Ontario, Canada. We packed up our life and we moved to Canada Exactly. Who said that? Exactly. I said, oh my goodness. I wasn't just out of the organization, I was out of my country. And I spent a lot of time, particularly in that first year, asking a lot of questions we should have asked a long time ago. What the heck am I going to do with my life? I mean, here I am, 40 years old. I got a lot of life left. What am I going to do with it? Am I going to keep being somebody else's employee? Am I going to keep having other people tell me what my life is supposed to be? Or am I going to decide to take control of my own life? And as I wrestled with it, I came up to 3 principles. And the 3 principles became vision for your life. Principle number 1 was know who you are and be it. Who am I? Who's Bob Perkins? I didn't even know. I'm 40 years old and I've been doing this shtick, and by the way, I was maybe, without being too egotistical, maybe the most successful area director in the country, and I still didn't know who I was. My boss in Canada gave me the Harvard Business Review summary article, the book Built to Last, Jim Collins, Built to Last. Build your vision on your core values. I thought, that's great. Makes sense to me. I read it, I said, immediately, makes sense. But for people, I think it's a core motivator. There's something in the very core of each of us that is why we do, what we do, the way we do it. I had that idea. I faxed the article to my best friend, Eric Herrincole, who's here tonight. Thank you for coming. We met for a weekend to talk about it. And Eric said, that's not your core motivator. This is your core motivator. I said, wait, you don't get to tell me who I am? He said, yeah, okay, but I'm right. We argued most of the day. By dinner, we weren't speaking. I said, look, we're not going to talk, we might as well go to the movies. Went to see the first Austin Powers. I did that for 90 minutes. Walked out on the street and said, Eric, I think you're right. How do I not know me? If I don't know me, what are the chances most people know who they are? Principle number 1, know who you are and be it. Before you can build a life, you have to know whose life you're building. Principle number 2, build your job into your life, not your life into your job. I had spent the first, whatever that was, almost 20 years building my life into my job. The job was everything, and I was trying to figure out how to fit my life into that job, and that's a really bad paradigm. And so the second principle was to flip that paradigm and say, no, this is my life, and it's just the job. And how does that job fit into my life? Figure out my life first, then the job. The job fits into my life, not the other way around. And the third principle was never retire. I was taking my friend Jerem Bars to the airport one day in the days when you could walk down to the gate, and Jerem Bars was a professor at Covenant Seminary and maybe the smartest man I've ever met. Jerem does not have a PhD, and as I was told when I asked about that, and I asked the president of the seminary that, he said, when you're as smart as Jerem, you don't need a PhD to prove it. And Jerem is that smart. We were walking through the airport and we were talking about work, and I was saying, well, Jerem, some work is better than other. You know, there's good work and there's not good work, and there's kind of holy work and there's not, and you know, the work that some people do is of more value. And he said, no, Bob, work, the very work itself is good and good for you. And I said, no, Jerem, I said, I don't think you understand what I mean. And he stopped in his tracks and he turned to me and he said, I understand exactly what you mean. I just disagree. At which point, by definition, I'm wrong. I mean, when the smartest person you know tells you they disagree, you're wrong. And it sent me, you know, a tailspin to think, what is he talking about? Work is good and good for you? For those of you who care, by the way, and this is as much of a footnote as possible, the Hebrew word in Genesis 1 that God created the world is the same word as God worked. And if God worked, work is a holy activity. before we go on, I want you to do a little exercise in your minds. It was a Christmas Eve. We were in Kazakhstan, and we were going home for Christmas Day to North Carolina to see my family, my parents. And Christmas Eve, my wife walks in with groceries and fresh fruit. And I look at her and I say, Deb, fresh fruit? We're leaving tomorrow. She says, well, I was thinking that after church we would come back and we would have a fire in the fireplace next to the tree, and we would have fondue with the boys and watch movies of them when they were little growing up. I thought, oh my, she has a picture. She has a very clear picture. And I have two choices. I have one choice. I said, dear, that sounds wonderful. And I went upstairs and I said, boys, and I don't know how old they were, like 12 and 9. And I said, boys, your mother has a picture of what's going to happen tonight. And that's what's going to happen tonight. And I don't care what you have to do before you're leaving tomorrow. You have to get it done before church. Because once 5 o'clock church, you're done for the night. They did. We went to church, came back, got the fondue. Man, it was lovely. It was a wonderful evening. About an hour in, the boys look at me like, Dad, come on. And I say, dear, how's this? And she said, this has been perfect. Yeah, they can go. Perfect. I said, that's a really helpful little tool. What's your picture? We use this all the time. Debbie and I use this all the time now. If you take nothing else from this talk, take this. I had a guy come up to me at the Union League one day and he said, you're Bob Perkins? I said, yes. He said, I read your book. That picture thing is really good. I'm like, great, 250 pages and you got one thing. Well, kill myself and you get a picture exercise. What's your picture? And can you articulate it? Debbie and I will say all the time, we're having people for dinner, and if it's people that we are having because we have to, I say, okay, what's this night going to look like? What's your picture? It's going to be, they're here by 6:30. Dinner's at 6:45. They're out by 7:30. We buy wine from the state store, and it's not that bad, but But if it's a different group, we have a group of 20-somethings now, 20 young marrieds that we have for dinner once a month. What's the picture for that? And we sit and talk about, we're going to introduce them to long French meals and really good wine. And that evening starts at 6:30, but it starts with bits and bites and kheer. And then we do the first course at 7:30, and the main course not till 9. And dessert and aperitifs. And we can talk through exactly what that picture looks like. It's a great little communication tool. And here's the challenge for you tonight while I'm talking and you're thinking. What's your picture? What's your picture of 85 years old? What's your picture of 75? Of 65? Keep going back. What's your picture? And can you articulate that picture? Let's talk about retirement because that's the name of this talk, and let's talk about why to never retire. As I already said, work is good and good for you. You're made to work. It's a good thing to work. Retirement was actually invented in 1889 by the German Chancellor Bismarck. Solve an unemployment crisis. Get older workers out of the workforce, get younger people in, solve the unemployment crisis. Roosevelt brought it to the States in 1932 for the same reason. Social Security was intended to kick in at 65 years old when average life expectancy was 62. Franklin Roosevelt, by the way, died at 63, never got to collect Social Security. Not that he needed it, but it would have just been nice, That's the paradigm of 1932, and it's the paradigm we're still living in. And it's wrong. It's wrong. because it assumed that most people would be dead. And instead, we've developed a mindset. I don't care about the economics of it. I mean, those are important, and because they don't work. But I don't care about the economics of it. I care about the mindset. For thousands and thousands of years, no one retired. Until 1932, when we tried to solve an economic crisis. Then we brought this idea that we would spend years doing nothing into our culture. We got this idea that the goal of life is to get enough money to do nothing. And it's from the pit of hell and smells like smoke. To quote Steve Brown. Think about the people who don't retire. I was just watching, you're a certain age, and most of you are. Rickles did not, he was performing at 88 years old, and still hysterical, by the way. He just died, right, a month ago. 90 years old, Don Rickles. Tony Bennett is still singing at 94. I mean, I gotta read these to get these ages right. I don't want to. Trump is 72. Hillary is 69. Reagan was 69 when he became president, and Eleanor Roosevelt. I just watched the Roosevelts too. Eleanor Roosevelt was 77 years old when she went to Geneva to hold the conference on human rights. At 77 years old, outliving Franklin by 15 years. Think of the performers and the politicians. Think of the doctors and the lawyers that don't retire. And the college professors. Because they love what they do. That's why Tony Bennett's not retiring. He's not retiring because he needs the money. He's not retiring because he loves what he does. The problem with us is that we want to retire because we don't love what we do. Build your job into your life. Get a picture for your life and figure out how to do the work that fits into that life. You'll never retire. I'll give you a little bit of statistics on retirement. I'm going to read this. It's written by doctors, so it's not exactly easy to, but you'll see. Early retirement is supposed to give you extra golden years to enjoy, but that may not happen. A new study suggests. A study of Shell oil employees shows that people who retire at 55 and live to be at least 65 die sooner than people who retire at 65. After age 65, the early retirees have a 37% higher risk of death than their counterparts that retired at 65. That's not all. People who retire at 55, get this, people who retire at 55 are 89% more likely to die in the 10 years after retirement than those who retire at 65. Let me read that one again. You got it the first time. Oregon State University researchers found that healthy adults who retired 1 year past age 65 had an 11% lower risk of death from all causes, even when taking into account demographic, lifestyle, and health issues. Even people who described themselves as unhealthy were found likely to live longer if they kept working. Even the unhealthy would live longer if they kept working. It may not be, the researchers say, it may not apply to everybody, but we think work brings people a lot of economic and social benefits that could impact the length of their lives. Yeah. Change the paradigm. Change the paradigm. Retirement was for another generation. Our generation, my generation, and as I look around this room, all but about 3 of you, and I don't know how you got in here. We're baby boomers. We always did it different. It's time to do this different. Our parents retired. My father is essentially in a college dorm with a toilet. And he goes to his 3 meals a day and still checks his mailbox. It's a college life. Waiting to die. I have a friend who sold his business out in St. Louis and got his 8 or 10 million on it. And in 3 years he built the perfect house. And then he went down to Lake of the Ozarks and built the perfect summer place. That's a contradiction in terms if ever there was. Perfect place at Lake of the Ozarks. I know a group of young marrieds who were trying to meet together and they had outgrown anyone with their living rooms. And I said, why don't you, 10,000 bottle wine cellar, why don't you have them at your brand new beautiful home once a month and open some wine and, love them. No. I don't want to do that. Are you really alive at that point? I mean, you're breathing, but do you have a life? My 60th birthday was a year and a half ago. It was really was the greatest night of my life. And actually, I had the greatest 60th anybody could ever have, a week-long celebration. My wife had an event on the first night for my peers and my friends, and then we had family the next night. And on the actual night, Wednesday, my best friends came over and we opened a bottle of 1955 Bordeaux that a wine merchant in Bordeaux had given me. It was fabulous, by the way. And then I don't even remember what Thursday night. Well, Thursday night was our small group. Then it's Friday night. I have a Friday morning men's group that I lead, and they had an all-day golf outing and a dinner that night, not for my birthday, but just that was part of the week. And then Saturday night, my friend Eric gathered 25 guys from all over, from California and Vancouver and Puerto Rico and Toronto and St. Louis and Colorado. And they all came in to celebrate my birthday. We had dinner at the Union League, and each guy got up and spoke, and it was unbelievable. And I thought that night, that's what I want my life to be about. The investment in these guys. The first 30 years, that was my childhood. The second 30 years, that was my adulthood. You come into your own in that second 30 years, and there's years 30 to 60. You have your family, and you pay off your house, and you do your job, and your life. But we're talking now about what's that last third. If it's childhood and adulthood, and the last third I'm calling elderhood. And we've lost a sense in our culture that elderhood is a good and valuable and important thing. We're the first culture in the history of humankind that worships youth. And I want to spend my elderhood investing in the youth, in the guys between 25 and 50. And I want to sit around the table at my 80th and look at a whole new group of guys and say that was worth it. The last 20 have been just as dynamic as the 20 before it. So on the phone today with a guy who's getting a 20-something guy who's getting married and going to France for his honeymoon, and he called me for advice. It's great. Harvard Business School guy, and I'm on the phone with him, and I'm saying, okay, look at Paris here. Can you see the Fifth Aggrandizement? And he is, he knows Google. So he's pulling up maps. And it hit me, yeah. He knows how to use Google way better than I do, but he doesn't know what he's looking at. We're the first culture to worship youth. It's time to change the paradigm. Elderhood is the question. What are you going to do with your elderhood? I've decided that, particularly after this, and Debbie and I sat down after my 60th, and I said, Debbie, what are we going to do? I said, I want to do a dinner once a month with 20-something couples that we know. And I already told you about that. I said, I have a coaching group, and most of my coaching clients are older because they can afford it. I said, I'm going to do a coaching group for younger guys and charge them what I would never, as little as I would charge anybody else. But it's an investment in them. And so I started that. We do an Easter egg hunt. We're just thinking about that because Lauren and Kathy are here. We do an Easter egg hunt for young couples to bring their kids. And we have no connection to that except that we love them. And it's fantastic. And I'm saying, as an elder, what does it look like to invest back into another generation and have an impact on people? My wife is really my hero because she runs a ministry in Philadelphia called Young Lives. She has led the ministry to teen mothers. It is an unbelievable what they do. They have an opportunity for these teen moms to come and they take care of them. But the biggest key is they get them mentors. They get them older women who walk alongside of them through not just the process of giving birth to their children, but also to raising these kids. She walked into a Bed Bath & Beyond, and the manager of the store saw her and ran out and hugged her. It was one of the girls that she got involved with when she first moved here 10 years ago. Her daughter was 2 and her daughter's 12 now. She ran out and hugged Debbie and said, I don't know where my life would be without you. We have a little condo in Naples, and it's great, by the way. And as much time, and I will never retire there. Please, Lord. It is God's waiting room, and I'm. We had lunch with one of our friends who has retired down there. And they were showing us, after the obligatory pictures of their grandkids, which all look the same. Can we be honest here? I mean, really, all of your grandkids, they all look the same to me. We walk out, and after the pictures of the grandkids, they show us pictures of paper towel hats. The wife is into taking paper towels, and I think they get damp enough, and then they color them, and then they let them dry, and then they fold them into hats. We get in the car, Debbie closes the door, and she looks at me and she says, don't ever let me retire. I don't want to spend my life making paper towel hats. And that, my friends, is the question for us tonight. What's the picture of your life? What will you give your life to? What will these last 30 years of elderhood look like? You spend your life obsessing on your grandkids, staring at your computer screen, following your stocks, building the perfect house, or getting your handicap down, or making paper towel hats? Are you going to do something significant that not only is good, but good for you? Thank you.
one thing you realize about Bob Perkins, he's extremely bashful. Never speaks his mind, never tells you what he's really thinking. So Q&A ought to be entirely entertaining. If you might take Bob's lead and be vulnerable enough to ask your questions, maybe just curiosity about what you've heard, maybe about your own story, maybe you have a question about where you're headed. Get as practical as you'd like, or maybe challenge something Bob's shared. There's some things, maybe some of you make paper towel hats, and you'd like to challenge the validity of that retirement strategy. So, we're going to take questions. Just raise your hand, stand up, and speak real loudly. We actually have an online audience that I would invite to go ahead and text us on our GoToMeeting account. They'll be giving us questions. We'll share the appropriate and good questions from that environment as well. So, who's got the first question? Go ahead and raise your hand and jump right in. If there's a pause, I know. Here we go. Great.
When you talk about never retiring, are you just talking about never retiring from your job, as opposed to something that you may or may not be paid for, but is very, a wonderful thing, that ministry?
That's a great question. There's a couple layers to that question. First of all, what I'm saying is never retire from life, number one. But number two, work is good and good for you. And I really believe that it should be compensated. I think if it's work, a worker is worth his wages. He should be compensated, or she. So I don't care what you're doing. I believe that the economics are such that there should be compensation.
When you went on your retreat with your friend at 40 or whatever it was, and he said, no, that's not it, this is it. Did he figure that out for you, or was that a starting point where then you actually figured it out on your own as far as what you wanted to do to follow you? You know what I'm saying? Did you actually do the work, or did he figure it out for you?
Well, he's really the Eric knew my core motivator way better than I did, and he could see Now, he'd known me for a long time by then, and he said, no, this is what you're not seeing about yourself. This is who you are.
And then did you use that knowledge to figure out what you wanted to do, or did it kind of go hand in hand?
I wound up just talking about the idea that everybody has a core motivator. I had a buddy in St. Louis who said, I want you to help me with this and help me with my company. And I said, John, I'm in the ministry. I don't do consulting anymore. I did that before. And he said, no, if you don't help me, I'm going to lose this company, and then I won't be able to support you. And I said, when do you want to start? You know? and then John told Steve, and then Steve told, and next thing I knew, there was just this word of mouth, and I didn't know what we were looking for in terms of core motivators. I had no idea. When my first clients would say, I'd say, what do you think your core motivator is? My first clients would say, it's success, it's money, it's competition, it's sex, I'd say, it's none of those things. I mean, my master's in theology, and I was saying that we are created in the image of God, we are image bearers, and our core has to be something in the nature of God. And none of those things were nature of God, so I was looking at something deeper. At about the 100 client mark, I saw the same 7 core motivators repeating, and codified them at that time and said, here's the 7. So now what we look for is, which one of these 7 is your core motivator.
What are the 7?
I knew someone was going to ask that. I will,
Okay. I can read the book.
You're there in the book. Relationships, one-on-ones, belonging, groups and teams, caring, attracted to needy people, serving, attracted to people's needs, giving, look to ways I can give, creating, what can I make, and perfecting, how can I make it perfect. All nature of God, all at the core of who we are. I will tell you this, you can look at that list, decide which one you are, cross it off, I'll guarantee it's not that. So one thing I will absolutely know for sure is that nobody knows what their core is. It's been the biggest surprise to me in the 20 years I've been doing this. I've not had one person come through and say, I know my core motivator and have it be right.
So your core motivator, is it fluid?
No.
Does it change?
No, core motivator does not change.
Why?
Because it's hardwired, because you're created in the image of God.
Interesting.
And by the way, hang on, Laura. But by the way, there's just been a long-term study, 60-year study of personality. And personality, they are finding, does not change in the short term, but it does in the long term. So over a 5-year period, your personality doesn't change, but over your period of your life, it'll change 3 or 4 times. Core motivator is not like that. It does not change. And we've seen that. I mean, I've already seen it over the 20 years. I'll tell you what else doesn't change is is a great test if you know the Kolbe, K-O-L-B-E. Kolbe does not change either. Wrong.
So, if we don't know what our core motivator is, who do we ask?
Is that a plant?
Really?
For a small fee. For a big fee.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing this a lot, and you know, that is the secret sauce in what I do is helping you see your core motivator. But it is in the book for on Amazon, so you can read it all there, and the process is there. Write your life history, look at your life history, try to discern it. In the back.
I love everything you're saying. It's
Thank you.
fabulous, it's inspiring, it's motivating, it's energetic. What if you don't have good health? What do you do with people who have to be in nursing homes in a little dorm space or at home, whatever? What are your suggestions for people who don't have the health to do what you're saying?
Yeah, I think figure it out. Figure out how to do something. I mean, I look. We're all. I mean, I told you I'm 61 now, and I think, good grief, my life cannot become about doctor's appointments. You know, but I know that I'm not. That's part of my reality too. It's part of our reality too. Nonetheless, we have to figure out something we can do that's significant. And the research is telling us that when we do, that even helps our health. I mean, not to pick on my dad, whom I love, and there's no chance you're watching this, but if you are. You know, for him to sit in that room all day and do nothing is just, you know, yeah.
So as a follow-up,
Yes.
do you have things that you can see nursing homes, retirement homes doing differently to help mesh into what you're saying?
That's a great question. I have not thought about it. I'm trying to prevent us getting there, so I haven't really thought about what to... Seriously, I haven't really thought about what to do with the people there. I'm trying to talk to people before they ever get there. My sense is that you've got to figure out what that life is going to look like and what you're going to do that's significant. And whether you go into the nursing home or not, I mean, when you are completely dysfunctional and that's where you are, go to die, okay. But that's not what I see even when I go to Arbor Acres. I know, Arbor Acres. But it's not. What I see are people who are still, they have life left. And another bridge club is not what they need.
Bob, can I challenge your statement a little bit about saying that, I think it was an answer to one of the earlier questions about, you know, when you transition it should be paid because work has value. And I think there are probably a lot of organizations that benefit from retired people who work as hard as people who are being paid and maybe do it for the love, and it doesn't mean it's any less satisfying or gratifying or important. So maybe comment on that or respond to that.
I wasn't saying it's less significant, gratifying, or important at all. It can be all of those things. I just think that work should be compensated. I don't care what work you're doing. If you want to do some volunteer work, that's great, but that's what it is. And if you're going to do work, I think you should be doing compensated work until the day you die. Because you're worth it. You're worth it.
What if the compensation is just the feel-good, you know, heartwarming thing? Is that compensation?
Sure. If you want it to be compensation, it's compensation for you. It's not what I believe. I believe that work is worth compensation. All work is worth compensation. And by the way, I think that's better. I think it's better for all around. You're talking to somebody that spent 22 years in nonprofit. I'll tell you, the nonprofits would be better off if they paid people what they're worth. The nonprofits would be better off if they paid people what they were worth. For a lot of reasons. That would be another hour-long talk. But.
What advice would you offer to someone going into the adulthood, as you call it, aside from painting a picture and then putting your life into that, or fitting the job into that? What can you offer to help you get there?
We all have heard the saying, do something you enjoy and you'll never work a day in your life. That's really true. And to figure out what gets you up in the morning. Most of us have had the experience of having work that we loved jumping out of bed and going to do. At some point in our life, there was something we just didn't matter. The hours didn't matter. Because we loved it. And that's I think part of understanding the picture, not the whole thing, but part. What is the work that energizes you, that gets you up and you just say, man, I do this every day. I would do this every day for free. Now figure out how to get compensated for that. I'm a... oh my. I also have done a fair amount of singing and performing in my life. And it is intoxicating. I mean, it is so much fun. And you think, I would do it for free. And I have. And it's so cool, I would do it for free. And yet, they don't. Tony Bennett isn't doing it for free. And he doesn't need the money. I think it's Sigmund Freud that said payment is part of the therapy. It's good for anyway.
Take one more question.
What's your biggest challenge right now?
Oh gosh. Today or just in general? It's a good question. My biggest challenge right now, probably juggling everything that's going on. I've got a lot of, between the coaching practice and the wine business and starting I didn't even mention this, goodness gracious. And starting I got elected president of the new singing group at the Union League, so I'm trying to start that, and that's wonderful. And but part of that coming out of my 60th was to start a foundation. Out of my 60th was to start the Timothy Foundation. We got IRS approval last in August, and so we're putting together a board and beginning to move on that. And the purpose of the Timothy Foundation is to identify, recruit, and pay for young leaders to go to seminary. And so the hardest part really is finding and recruiting them. And so that's right now part of my big challenge is getting that off the ground.
So it's no surprise hearing Bob use that word significance. Did you guys hear it earlier? It's one of the primary words we use in the practical expression of our mission. We help families, we free them to a life of significance. And those of you who have been clients with us, some are in the room who've been with us for decades, we're so grateful that you're here. You've had a taste of that because you know that the planning relationship and the investment work we do is so far beyond the ones and zeros of a net worth schedule, right? And so we're elated that you'd be here tonight. Some of you are new friends, new relationships. We'd be eager to start that conversation with you. I had a real privilege a couple weeks ago to talk to a group of folks about the negative side effects of too much financial capital. Sounds again like retirement in the Ozarks or a lake at the Ozarks. How could an abundance of financial capital actually be a bad thing, right? Most of the financial plans I've ever done in the last 10 years, financial capital and abundance usually creates lots of smiles. And one of the things we've discovered, and I think, Bob, you alluded to this tonight rather directly, is that the abundance of financial capital can often divide us from the relationships that matter most to us. And ultimately, if we're not careful, they can actually isolate us. And we've tasted that maybe in our younger years, and I know some people in my own family where the abundance of capital has actually freed them to be isolated. Does that make any sense to you? And so one of the conversations that I've had with some clients and with some new friends, new prospects of our firm, is to challenge this notion of Western culture that says, if you just have more, and you can spend more, and you can get more, and stuff it all in your two-car garage, then life automatically gets better. And so we would be really excited. The partners that I have here in the room and the rest of our team, we would be really eager to have a conversation that's beyond the ones and the zeros with you and your family. We also work with institutions, and we love the work that we do there to help, again, free institutions to honor their mission statements. So if you're here for the first time, we're so glad that you were here. If you are a client of our firm, thank you for keeping our lights on. We don't exist without you. So we are so happy that you were here. And again, join me in thanking Bob for being with us tonight. Thank you so much. So we've got plenty of wine. I have release forms from all of your children and grandchildren. There is no curfew. So mingle, enjoy yourselves. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you again soon.